to name this vibe check, which is going to reflect the name of the app. And we'll click next, and we'll keep the default permissions set as they are. Once you click create project, you'll be redirected to the cluster overview window. So we'll click on create a cluster. For this project, the free tier will be, today we'll build a full stack CRUD application using Next.js, Mongoose, and MongoDB. What I have is a beginner friendly CRUD app using some of the latest features with Next.js. The way it works is users have the ability to enter a mood. So let's say that we want to document how we're feeling, and right now we want to document our feeling on how we were feeling when we were reading a book, let's say. And we'll select the mood. The mood that we'll select is that it was a decent book, so we'll say it was indifferent. We'll hit save. And you'll notice that without a page refresh, the new mood is now immediately added to our mood list. If you also notice, we receive a pending state once we click the button to save a mood. We also have the ability to update or edit a mood. So let's say that we initially logged this as indifferent, but we became angry because the book took a turn that we were unexpecting. Once we click update, you'll notice that we get a pending state, and this is using some of the latest hooks within Next.js. And we now have the new mood that shows angry. And last but not least, we couldn't have a CRUD application without having the ability to delete. So we'll say that we want to delete the book that we read, and once we click the delete button, you'll notice that it immediately deletes from our list, and we now only have the 3 moods that we originally listed. So this is a simple beginner-friendly CRUD application using the latest version of Next.js, which is Next.js15, Mongoose, and MongoDB. And we're also using TypeScript and a little bit of Tailwind CSS for some simple styling. So with that said, and without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So to start out, what I have is a open directory on my desktop within VS Code, and I'm going to open up the terminal so I can go ahead and install the latest version of Next.js. So I'll type in npx create next app at latest space then dot. And for this project, we are going to use TypeScript. We'll say yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to the SRC, yes to the app router, no to the turbo pack, and no to the import alias. Dependency list. Well, I tell you what, we don't necessarily have to worry about it for this project. So let's go ahead and set up our connection to the database, and we'll be using MongoDB. So to get us started, I'm going to install the Mongoose package. So in the terminal, I'll type in npm I mongoose, and this is going to give us the ability to interact with the database. It takes away some of the risk in typing code directly into the database. Using this feature is going to make it a lot easier to interact with it. So now that we've installed the Mongoose package within the root directory, let's go ahead and add a file named .env. And I'm going to add this file to the .getIgnored. That way when I share this repo, my environment variables aren't at risk. We'll go to mongodb.com. And if you don't already have an account, you can try it for free. But if you do, you can just click sign up with Google, but it's going to recognize that I already have an account and sign me in. And once signed in, I may need to delete a project. Let's see something here. Yep. So I need to delete one of my projects. I'm going to do that now. So within the projects overview window, we'll click on new project to set up a new project. And I'm going to name this vibe check, which is going to reflect the name of the app. And we'll click next. And we'll keep the default permissions set as they are. Once you click create project, you'll be redirected to the cluster overview window. So we'll click on create a cluster. For this project, the free tier will be just fine. We'll keep the name of it as cluster 0. We're not going to preload any data, and we do want the automatic security setup. We'll keep the default AWS provider. Be sure to select the region that's closest to you, and then we'll click create deployment. And from here, we'll need to connect to the cluster. So I'm going to click on create a database user. And we'll go ahead and click on check or choose a connection method. Uh-oh, might have hit the wrong button. Back to cluster, connect, drivers, and it is still in the process of provisioning. So while it is provisioning, what I'll do is go ahead and set up the database function to connect to MongoDB. So within the root directory, let's add a folder named lib. And inside of lib, I'm going to add a file named db.ts. Within this file, I want to add the function to connect to MongoDB. So we'll start by importing Mongoose. Mongoose from Mongoose. Then we'll create a const named connectDB. And it will be a asynchronous function. We'll have a try catch block, and we basically want to use the Mongoose method connect, and we'll be using the process.env, and the environment variable that we're going to store is going to be mongo_URI. And this will hold our connection string to MongoDB once it is finished provisioning. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it now, and we'll paste it into the .env file. That way we minimize any potential risk of an error. And then if we are successful with our connection, I also want to log it to the console just so we can have it documented. We'll have it state Mongoose connected to MongoDB. And then within the catch portion, if we get an error, we want to log it to the console. And this will be error. And we'll set the process.exit status to 1. And we want to export default disconnection. And we'll add that exclamation mark. Okay. So this takes care of the connection to, well, this is going to give us the connection between Next.js and MongoDB. If we go back to our MongoDB cluster, the connection string is now available. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it as is. A second. Click on connect, go to drivers, and we'll just need to You usually can just grab the code from this connection window, but that's okay. I will, what we can do is we could just reset a passcode. So we'll click close and we'll go to network access, database access, click on edit, and we'll click edit password. We'll have it auto generate, click copy. Be sure to go down to update user and then just replace the password with the password that we just created. We'll close that file out. Excuse me. So with that, let's go ahead and clean up our app a little bit. First, we'll start with the global.css and we'll remove the boiler CSS from the file. We'll just keep the tailwind configuration. Excuse me. And then within the page.tsx, we'll just remove this div and we'll replace it with a new div and add homepage, as this will represent the homepage or the root route of our application. Then within the terminal, we'll go ahead and start up our app. So within it, we'll type clear just to clean everything up. We'll type in npm run dev just to see what we get. And we'll go back to our local host. Give it a few minutes. And as you can see, we now have homepage on our root route. And we don't have any errors within the terminal, so that is a good thing as well. So with the database connection established, let's go ahead and build the models, which is going to help organize the data within the database. So within the root directory, let's add a folder named model. And the model that we're going to be storing for this project is a mood. So we'll add a file named mood.ts. So we'll start with a couple of imports. We'll bring in Mongoose, and then from the Mongoose library, we want to grab document and schema. This is to ensure type safety with our models and that we're putting good data within the database. So first we'll build the interface and we'll say iMood extends document. And we're going to be storing a note as a string, a mood as string, and we'll do created at with the date. All right, now we'll need to build the schema, so we'll call this mood schema. Schema is equal to new schema. Then within it we'll pass the fields, so we'll have a note, which is a type of string. That's capital string, and we'll set required to true. We'll build a mood, set the type to string, and we'll make it required, and then we'll do created app. We'll set the type to date, and we'll say the default is date.now. Okay, this looks good. Now we'll need to check if there's already a mood schema in the database. Models, mood or mongoose.model. And then we'll go export default mood. I think this is because I have this off. There we go. All right, and this looks good. We'll go ahead and save this file. All right, now that we have our model set up, let's go ahead and build our first action. Well, I'll tell you what, before we build our first action, let's work on the layout of our app. So we have the home page set up, but I also want a couple other things to go within this page, if you will. We're only going to have a single page application, so there's no need to create too many routes and folders, anything like that. Everything is going to be handled from the home page, and we're going to use a side drawer to create and update the mood within the root layout. So we'll start by removing the image import. Then within the home page, the initial div, we'll just keep this first div and remove home page. Then within the div, we'll add a new div and give it a class name of MX Auto, which is setting the margin to auto on both sides. We'll set the max width to be, we'll go with medium. We'll set the width to full, and we'll give a little bit of padding. Now I want a header, and the header is just basically going to have a logo, which will be the name of the website. So within the root directory, let's add a folder named components. And within components, we'll add a file named header, header.tsx. All right, so we'll go with, to build out our header, it's going to be very simple. We'll start with a const named header and be sure to give it a capital H. And what I did to create this function is to use the RFCE shortcut from Visual Studio Code, but you can always manually type it out. And I'm going to replace this initial div with header. We'll give it a little styling by setting the width to full. We'll set the height to 48. Give it a little background color. I'm going to go with gray 200. We'll go flex, center the thing on the x-axis. Then I'll create a nav within this header, and we'll give it a class name of MX Auto. We'll go max width screen medium. We'll give it a little padding of 4 and set the width to full. And we're only going to have one item within this header, which is going to be the logo, and I'm just going to just give it simple text since this is a simple CRUD app. It'll be a H1, and just give it a little bit of styling, setting the text to extra large, the font to bold. We'll say leading, be loose, and we'll set the text color to gray 700. And I think that should be enough. So we'll just save this file and close it out. If we go back to the home page, I'm going to import it. And for this, I'm just going to use a shortcut by using the less than bracket capital H EAD. And as you begin to type it out, it should allow you to autocomplete and bring in this header. So if you save this file and go back to localhost, you'll see that we now have the header that we just built. It's centered because we used the margin of auto, and we set the width of it to be full and gave it a container, if you will, of medium. So this is what we were going for. So great. Now we're ready to bring in the next component, which will be a action bar. And this action bar is basically just going to give us the ability to have a button to click on to open up a side drawer and create a new mood if we choose to do so. All right, so we'll go back to VS Code, and in the components directory, let's add a new file name. We'll call it side drawer. .tsx, and we'll start out by marking this as a client-side file, so we'll mark it with use client. We'll create the template and we'll call it side drawer, and this will be a reusable side drawer, so we'll need to give it some props because, like I mentioned, this is going to hold the ability to create and update a mood. So we'll state interface side drawer props. The first prop is going to be is open. Then we'll go with on close. Set this to null. And of course we'll need to pass in children, LDREN, and this needs to be optional. We'll say react node, and we will also use this to receive the update, or the ability to edit, I should say. So we may pass in, well, we will pass in a mood, and with the mood I'm going to go ahead and destructure it out. So we'll say that it has a ID of string, a note of string, the mood will be a string as well. Click save. I think you might be able to see that a little better. Okay. So with the interface prop set up, now we just need to work on the actual component itself. So I'm going to make a quick shift in this. We'll say const side drawer, and we'll say react dot fc, and we'll pass in the side drawer props, and it is going to be equal to, yep, and we'll pass in is open, on close, children, and mood. Right. So in the return statement, remove the div, and we'll replace it with brackets, and we'll say is open. If the function is open, we want to first off display a dark background so that the side drawer is what's pronounced on the screen. And in order to give it that dark overlay, we need to give it a fix. We'll set inset to 0. We'll give it a z index of 40 so it sticks off the page. We'll set the background color to black, and we'll give it an opacity of 50. And the other thing I want to do is, if we click on this dark overlay, I want the ability to close out this side drawer, not just clicking on the close button. So I'm going to add the on click handler and the on close function that will create and pass into it in the action bar. I'm going to go ahead and create or add this to it so that we can click on the dark overlay and it closes out. I'll show it to you once we actually build it out. Then outside of this div, we'll add another div, and this one will hold the side drawer itself and how it transitions from on the axis. So in the div, we'll give it a class name. And with this one, we're going to pass in temporal literals because we want it to be dynamic. So first, we'll style the side drawer. So we'll give it a position of fix. We'll set the top to 0. We want it to transition from the right. So we'll set right to 0. Set the height to full. The width of it is going to be 400. Uh-oh, I forgot. 400 pixels. The background color will be white. We'll give it a little shadow of 2XL. Transition, transform, and we'll say transform, and we'll set the duration to 300, and we'll go ease in and out. And then for the dynamic portion, we'll pass in, I'll bring this down to the next line, the $, curly brackets, and we'll say if it is open, we want it to transition on the X to 0, or we want the transition set to on the X to be full, and it is referring to the background being 400 pixels being full. That's what it's referring to. So then inside of this div, we'll pass in a button. This button is going to be the close button, and it'll be set at the top of the drawer, and we'll give it the on-click handler, and we'll pass in the on-close function that we'll create in just a moment. And for some simple styling, we'll give it a class name and set the padding of 4, and we'll set the text color to black. Click Save. Now underneath this closing tag for the button, we'll add a div. Class name, padding of 4. We'll give it a H1 of, we'll call it the vibe check. That's the name of the site. Vibe check. This is just going to be a logo, if you will. We'll set the text to large, and we'll set the font to semi-bold. And then underneath this H1, we want to render children. Now, if we wanted to, we could have made this a prop as well and passed it in so that we can change the title on the side drawer, but this is going to be just fine, so no worries there. So we can go ahead and close this file out. We're actually done with it. And now let's go back to the components directory, and this file is going to be stored, well, we want to bring, the side drawer in within the action bar. So we'll go ahead and create that action bar now. So within components, we'll add a file named action-bar.tsx. And we'll start by marking this as a client-side file. And I'll do we'll type it out. So we'll go ahead and begin with some imports, and we'll bring in React. And I also need to have the ability to manage the state of the drawer, whether it is open or closed. So we'll bring in the React hook, use state. Then let's import the side drawer that we just created. Make sure it's coming from /side drawer because it's in the same folder as the action bar. And for right now, that is going to be all that we need. So let's go ahead and build the function. So we'll say const action bar, and we'll say react.fc. And let's export it as well. We'll say export default action bar, and we'll add a return statement. Set section, say action bar. Hit save. Let's go ahead and import it into the page.tsx. So at the top of the file, we'll go import action bar, and this should come from @/components. And then underneath the header, let's just bring in action bar and hit save and go back to our local host. And you see we have the action bar underneath the header, just as we designed it, or we desired it, I should say. Okay, so we'll go back to VS Code, go to action bar, and we'll start by building out the state first. What we need is a state variable name is drawer open, and then we'll go set drawer open, and we'll set it equal to use state and set it to false. And we just need two additional functions. One is going to allow us to toggle the drawer. That will be the one that will go within the actual drawer itself. And the close drawer, we'll pass that in because remember we're using it for the dark overlay and also the close button. So we'll go with the toggle drawer first. We'll go const toggle drawer. And we'll set drawer open. And then we'll go prev. And we'll go explanation previous. So basically what this is saying is that we'll start with the initial state of it being true, which is going to be false. And then if we click, it's going to change true to false, making it in a false state, and it's going to change this to true. Okay. Then the next function we want is to close the drawer. And we'll use the set drawer open state variable, and we'll set it to false. Okay. Within the return statement, let's go ahead and begin to style out the action bar. So the section, we'll give it a width of full, background color of gray 200, flex, give it a little margin top and also margin bottom. We'll add another div to give a little bit of the layout. We'll set the max width to auto. The the max width will be set to medium. We'll give it a width of full and a padding of 4. Then we'll need to bring in the button, which is going to help open and close or toggle the side drawer. So we'll add a button tag and we'll label it post mood, which is going to give you the ability to post the mood. And then inside of the button, we'll pass in the on-click handler and the toggle drawer function that we just created. Style the button a little bit. Give it a background of gray 200, text of white, padding on the X of 4, Y of 2, and we'll go around it. And instead of it being gray, I'm gonna make it purple. And we'll set it to 500. Hit save. And as you can see, we now have the post mood button on screen. And we won't be able to see anything just yet because we haven't brought in the side drawer to test it out, but we'll work on that now. So underneath the button tag, let's go ahead and bring in the side drawer. Within it, we'll just pass in mood form for right now. And we know that we're getting an error because we need to pass in some children. The first one is going to be is open. And we'll pass in the is drawer open state variable. And then we'll also do on close. And we'll pass in close drawer. Click save. And as you can see, it is displaying, but the dark overlay is pronounced on the screen. And I think that is because we need to change the Z index of the drawer. So we'll go back to the side drawer. And we'll give this a Z, and we made that one 40. We'll make this one 50. And if we go back, you can see that the side drawer is now pronounced on the screen, or stands out on the screen because it has a higher index than the dark overlay. We can click the close button and the side drawer closes. We'll open it again, and if we click anywhere on screen, we notice that it closes as well. That's because we added the on-click handler to the dark overlay. So that is working perfectly as well. Let's see, we have on close. Okay, I will go back and fix that one. I just need to add a null property, but we'll come back and fix it. All right, so now I want to shift our focus to building out the form that's going to allow us to add a mood. So first what I want to do is let's build the action before we build the form itself. So within the lib directory, let's add a folder named actions, and within actions let's add a file named post_mood.ts. So within this file we're going to have the ability to use server actions in order to add a mood to our database. So up top we'll start by adding the use server notation at the top of the file, and in order to connect to the database we'll need to bring in the connection function that we set up. And I also want the ability to validate the data that we are adding to our database, and I'm going to use Zod to help with that. So within the terminal we'll add a new terminal, and let's type in npm I Zod and press enter. Okay, we can close the terminal out and we'll go ahead and import it, and this is importing Z inside of brackets, and this is going to come from Zod. We'll also need the model mood that we created. We'll bring in revalidate path so that we can revalidate the data after we've created a mood, and we'll also bring in redirect to redirect us back to the home page. This is going to come from Next navigation. Okay. So first, let's define the schema using Zod so that we can ensure we're passing in the proper data, and also we're going to use server-side validation and display it back to the user in the event fields are missing or requirements aren't met in order to post data within the database. So we'll create a const named mood schema, and we'll set it equal to z.object, and this is coming from Zod. The first field is going to be a note. It'll be a type of string. We'll state that users need to include a minimum of 2 characters. We'll use the .min function within Zod, and that takes in 2 arguments. The first argument is going to be the character count. The second argument is going to be the message back to the user. So we'll say note must be 2 characters long. Okay. Then we'll add a mood. This is also going to be a string. We'll use .min, 2 arguments. We'll make this one 1. We'll state mood cannot be empty. Hit save. Next up, we'll need to create an export const name post mood, and we'll set it equal to async, and we'll pass in the previous state state, and we'll state any, and we'll be passing in form data. And inside of this export const, we'll start by validating the data fields. So we'll go const validated fields is equal to mood schema. We want to use the mood schema to help validate the fields that we get from the form. So we're going to create a variable that holds the object that we just created, the mood schema. So we'll go mood schema.saveParse. And inside of it, we want to use the object.form entries, and we want to grab the form data from the from the entries, not values, entries. Looks good. We'll click save. We'll do a quick validation stating that if there are if the validated fields aren't success, then we want to return a error back to the user stating validated fields dot error dot flatten flatten dot fields errors. Let's see, error validated fields. Like I misspelled something here. Put parentheses instead of brackets. That's why it's yelling at me. All right. And then underneath that validation, we'll add a try catch block, and we'll say const validated data is equal to mood schema dot parse, and we want to grab the note and mood. But before we do that, we'll need to, we'll go const note. I need to grab this data from the form data first. So we'll go const note form data dot get note, and this will be a string. And we'll go const mood is equal to form data dot get mood, and this will be as string. And this doesn't need a S. There we go. Now that looks a little better. And then after we've grabbed it, after we've created the variable validated data that is parsing the note and mood that we got back from the browser, we'll create the const new mood and set it equal to await mood dot create, and we'll say the note will be validated data dot name, note, and the mood will be validated data dot mood. And then in the catch portion, that takes care of the try, and I also need to add the connection to the database, so we'll go await connect DB, and be sure to call it right after you've grabbed the form data. So now we want to care for the errors, and I'm going to say if there's an error of instance of z.zod error, and that shouldn't be a of there. And we don't need that there either, sorry. We'll go console.error, validation error. We'll go error.errors. And we'll throw a new error, validation fail. Check the input information. And then underneath the if, we'll go console.error, error creating mood. And we'll also want to log it for ourselves to the console so we can see it. Well, excuse me, we want to throw it back to the user as well. So we'll go throw new error creating mood. Please try again. And then if all goes well, we'll revalidate the path, and then we're going to revalidate it with the home page, and we'll redirect as well. So basically this is giving the error to the users for the form input, and if everything checks out and for whatever reason we can't create the mood, then we're going to use this error handling here. So with the action in place, now we're ready to create the actual form to create a mood. So within the components directory, let's add a folder name, or excuse me, not folder, let's add a file named mood form.tsx. So this form is going to have double duty. Not only will it have the ability to create a form or mood, excuse me, but if a mood gets passed to it, it also has the ability to update a mood as well. So before we begin to type out all of the functionality, let's start with some imports. So we'll go import use action state, and this is coming from this is one of the newer features within Next.js to kind of manage the state of the form. And we'll also bring in the post mood function that we just created. Let's start by creating a interface, because this is going to have props. So we'll go interface, mood form props. If we get a mood, let's make sure that we destructure it. We want to grab the ID as a string, note as a string, and mood will be a string. And we'll say if we are in the edit state, we just want to capture whether that's true or false. That way we can dynamically pass in the way we want our form to react in the event we are passing in a mood. So with the interface, now let's create the export function named mood form, and we're going to pass in a mood is edit. We'll set that equal to false. And then outside of the curly braces, we want to pass in the mood form props, and we'll add a return statement, and we'll go mood with a div. We'll go mood form. Let's save it. Go back to the action bar, and we can go ahead and bring in the mood form that we just created. So let's go back to the top, and we'll import mood form, and that's going to come from /mood form. And then down at the bottom, we'll just pass in mood form. Let me check one thing. Side drawer. No, nope, instead of null, pass in void. And that was for on close, okay. Right. That took care of that, and now the mood form says that with is edit, we're missing, what am I missing? With is edit, give me 1 second. is edit is equal to false. Okay, we'll come back to it. All right, so we have the, all right, so with the mood form, let's go ahead and build out the functionality, and we'll build out the ability to update and create at the same time. So within the function, let's start by creating or bringing in the use action state hook. So we'll go const state is equal to form action, and that's going to be equal to use action state. And in this, we're going to say if it is edit, we're going to use one. We're going to call the update mood function that we haven't created just yet. So we'll go post mood, or we'll say post mood for right now until we create the update function, and then we'll pass in null. So we'll need to come back and change this first one, because if it is edit, we want to use update mood, not post mood. But we got a minute. We don't have to worry about that just yet. Let's go ahead and build out the post mood functionality. So within the div, remove the mood form, and let's add a HTML form tag. The main thing, or the only thing that we need to pass into this is this form action. Previously, we would have passed in the post mood function that we just created within the lib directory, but because we are using this hook, it's going to take care of it for us. So we'll just pass in form action. Then within the action, we'll need to pass in a few inputs. The first one is going to be a type of hidden, and it's going to have the ID of the mood that we are passing in the event we need to edit a mood, and it's going to have a name of underscore ID. We'll give it a value of is edit, and then we'll say if it is edit, then we want to capture the mood dot ID question mark dot underscore ID. Yep. Or we just want to pass in an empty string. Oh, it helps if I close it. Then we'll pass a label, and we'll say this is going to be HTML for note. We'll give it a class name of block, text small. We'll set the font to medium. We'll set the text color to gray 900. And this label will be add note. Then underneath the label, we'll need the input for it. So we'll say input. We'll give it a type of text. We'll make the name of this note, of course. We'll give it an ID of note for the label. The default value we'll pass in, default value we'll pass in is that if it is edit, which is if the edit is set to true, then we want this to be the mood.note. Otherwise, we want it to be an empty string because we know we'll be creating a note. Let's give this some styling with a class name of background color gray 50. We'll set the border to gray 300. Text will be gray 900. We'll set the text to small, and we'll set rounded to small. Outline we'll set to none. A width of full, and a padding of 2. And before we check it out in the browser, we'll go ahead and hit save, and let's add the ability to see any errors that we may get that are coming from the server. So we'll add a div, and we'll give this an ID of note error, and we'll say area live. This is going to be polite, and we'll say area automatic. We'll set that to true. It's inside the div, we'll pass in a p tag, and it's going to pass in state, and this is coming from the use form action hook. State error question mark dot note. And just to style the p tag a little bit, I'm gonna give it a class name, a margin top of 2, so it's not so close to the input. We'll set the text to small, and we'll make the color of it red. Hit save, and if we go back, see it is showing a P. Let me remove this P. And we'll set the border to, let's set the border to black. Remove the outline none. There we go. So when you click, now we see that that is the input for it. And let's add a button. Actually, we'll hold off on adding a button for right now. We'll validate it and check the errors in just a moment. Let's go ahead and create the select mood option. So I'm actually just going to copy this label. We'll paste it back in. This is going to be for mood. Everything else can remain the same, and instead of add mood, we'll go with select mood, and this should be add note. Okay. And underneath the closing tag for the label, we'll add a select. The name of this is going to be mood. We'll give it an ID of mood. And actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I need to go back error and change this to mood, not note. Mood. Nope, wrong one. Sorry. Keep that one as is. I didn't add the error just yet. I'm tripping. We'll give it an ID, default value. This will be the exact same. So we'll say is edit. If it is edit, we want it to pass in the mood dot mood. And by default, we'll set our mood to happy. And we'll add some styling, class name of background color gray 50. We'll set the border to black, text small, rounded, small, and we'll say width the full, padding of 2. And you can see we have the select. All right, and within the select, we want to pass in the select options, and I'm just going to paste those in. I actually have emojis with these. Feel free to, I'm gonna have the code in the description, but the key is to make sure you include the value, and I have the values preset to happy, sad, angry, indifferent, and scared. Let's go ahead and hit save. Now let's go back to the div underneath the initial input, and we can copy it. And underneath the closing select tag, let's paste it in, and we'll update it. Instead of it being a note error, it's going to be a mood error. This remains the same, and the inside of the p tag, instead of it looking for a error with the note, we'll look for an error with mood. And then last but certainly not least, we need a way to submit this mood. And instead of hard coding the button within this file, I'm going to create a separate button component, and it will work dynamically so that it will work with the creating or posting a mood in addition to updating the mood. So within the components directory, let's add a file named submit button.tsx. At the top, we'll mark this as a client-side component, and we want to bring in the use form status from React DOM with this one. And I'm also going to install a soft package named CLSX, which is going to kind of help with some dynamic JavaScript that we want to pass in. So in the terminal, we don't have to stop the one that's already running. type in the command npm iclsx and press enter. And it should only take a moment or two, and once it's done, close out the terminal. Then we want to import CLSX from CLSX. We'll create a export const named submit button. And for this one, go ahead and create the arrow function. Instead of creating a separate interface, I'm just going to pass it directly. So what we want to pass in is a label, and it will be a type of string. Inside of the submit function, we want to destructure pending from use form status. And I'm just going to create a class name variable that we can pass into the return statement versus hard coding it directly within the return statement itself. So we'll say const class name is equal to CLSX. So the initial state of the button, we'll give it a text of white, a background color of gray. We'll make it 800. We'll set the font to medium. On hover, we'll set the background to gray 900. We'll go rounded, small, width is full, padding on the X will be 5, the Y will be 3, and we'll set the text to center. And then when it's in the pending state, I actually want the opacity to be 50. And we'll set the cursor to progress, so that gives us that effect. And then we'll set this to pending. Okay. And underneath the closing parentheses for the CLSX, let's add a return statement. And what we want to return is a button. Inside of the button, we want to grab the label first, and we'll say if the label is equal to add mood, then what we want is to have a span, and we'll grab the pending state from this, and we'll say saving one moment, yeah, or we want the user to see add. Okay, and then in the second portion, indicating that if it doesn't equal add mood, the label that we dynamically pass in, we want another span, and we can actually just copy this one, and we'll change this from saving to updating, and we'll go update, and I forgot the question mark. There we go. We'll hit save, and then now inside of the button, we'll give it a type of submit. We'll give it a class name, will be the class name that, and we want to bring in the submit button. So we'll go back to the top and go import submit. Button, yep. And then underneath the last closing div, let's add the submit button, and we know it gets a prop of label, and we'll say is edit. We'll go update mood. Otherwise, we want it to be add mood. And let's close the submit button, hit save. Now let's go back to our local host. We should have the ability to add it if I'm not missing anything. Let's go back to mood form. This looks good. Yeah, everything looks pretty good so far, but we will find out in just a minute. We should be able to add a mood without an issue. So let's go ahead and check it out now. And this is edit, should be a question mark. See that? There we go. So we'll go back to localhost. The add note will say first note, and we'll go with happy. Hit save. We get the pending state. We notice that the page refreshes and we get an error stating that it failed to fetch. Mongoose connection. So let's grab this connection cluster string. I think I might have grabbed the wrong one earlier. And we'll go back to the .env file. We can remove what is currently there. Replace it with this connection string. I see the difference now. And I'm going to reset the password on this. So we'll go to database. Edit password, auto generate one, copy it, go ahead and update the user, that way it saves, and we'll go back to the .env file, replace this with the actual password, hit save, close out the .env file, save this, and we'll go back to our local host. We might have stopped the server at some point. Yep, we did. So we'll go with npm run dev to restart it. And we'll try this again. All right. We'll go to our local host, and it is in the process of reloading. All right, we'll click on post mood. We'll say live note or live coding, and we'll keep the mood as happy. We get the pending state, save in one moment. It refreshes. Goes back to the home page, but we don't see anything there. If we go to the database and click on cluster, browse collections, we see that we now have a mood within the database, so we have the ability to connect to the MongoDB cluster. We also have the ability to add a mood. So let's go ahead and work on displaying the moods now. So we can close the terminal, and we should be able to close the mood form. Yes, we can close out the side drawer, and we can also close the action bar. So we'll go back to the root directory, and we'll click on page.tsx, and ultimately what we want to do is display the moods within a simple layout. So I'm going to add a div underneath the action bar, and inside of components, let's add a file. Let's name this, let's name it moodlist.tsx. Moodlist.tsx. Within this file, what we want to do is just store the list of all of our moods, and we'll also need to create a function in order to get the moods, and instead of storing it directly within this component, which we could, I'm going to store it within the lib and actions directory. So let's do that first. Within lib, within actions, let's add a file named getMood.ts, and we can close that out. We'll start by marking this as use server. We want to import the mood model, and we also want to import the connection to the database. We'll add an export const name get moods, and it's going to be an asynchronous function, and we'll add a try catch block. Start with the connection to the database, and we'll go const moods is equal to await mood dot find, and we want to return these moods. And remember, when we return them to the browser, they're going to be objects, so we want to turn this into JSON data. So we'll say return JSON.parse, and then inside of it we want to pass in JSON.stringify, and what we want to stringify are the moods. And if we get an error, we want to log it to the console, so we'll say console.error. And we'll return a empty array. Hit save, and that cares for the get moods. Now we can focus on displaying the moods that we have within the database. So we'll import React, bring in the get mood function that we just created. First off, I'm going to add in the array for our array of objects, emoji objects. That way we can dynamically display an emoji based upon the string of the user's mood that's stored within the database. So if their mood, we have a happy emoji, sad, angry, etc., etc. So that'll work. Then we need a const name mood list, and this will be a asynchronous arrow function. We'll say const moods is equal to await get moods, and that is the function that we imported, that we just created. Then we just need a return statement. We'll start with a div, and now we want, so we'll just loop over the array of moods, and for each mood we'll display a item, if you will, within the mood list. So we'll say curly braces moods dot map. I want to map and call them moods. Should I get this syntax right? And for each mood we'll go ahead and destructure it. So we'll say underscore ID will be any mood, can be any. And the other one is note, be any. Then for each mood we want to return a div, the initial div we need to give it a key, and this will be a key of mood underscore ID. We'll go with class name of flex, justify between. We'll set the items to centered, a width of full. The background will be white. We'll give it a border. We'll set rounded, padding of 4, margin bottom of 4. We'll say transition transform. We'll set the duration to 200. On hover, we'll give it a shadow of extra large, And we'll also give it a hover background of gray 100. Now underneath this div, we'll add another one. So with this div, we'll give it a class name of flex and item centered. So on the left, I want a span that shows the emoji. So we'll go span, and before we style it, we'll just go mood emojis, and we'll go mood.mood because that's what we want to access. And basically what this is saying is that based upon the mood, we're going to display an emoji. We'll say wrong one. There we go. We'll pass in a empty one, and we'll go with happy. Then underneath that span, we'll add another span, and we'll call this mood.note. Hit save. Now let's go back to the page.tsx, our root layout, and let's bring in this mood list just to see what we have on screen. So we'll go import mood. Nope, forgot the brackets. Mood list. It helps if I export it. Export default mood list. Sorry about that. Hit save. And we'll go back mood. From @/components/mood list. Hit save. There we go. Oh, so it didn't need the brackets. Sorry about that. Hit save. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit save. Go back to localhost, and as you can see, we now have the live coding displayed on screen. So we have the ability to get. So now let's add in the ability to update a mood. And we'll need to start with the mood action. So we'll go inside of the actions directory. We'll create a file named update mood.ts. The update mood function is going to be very similar to the add, but we'll just type it all out from scratch. So we'll start by marking this file as use server. We'll bring in the mood model, and we'll go import connect to DB. We'll bring in Zod, and we'll go revalidate path, and we'll go import redirect. We want to have the mood schema to begin with, so we'll go back to, we can actually copy the same one from the post mood. So we'll go to post mood and just copy this schema, and we'll go back to update mood, and we can just paste it in. Let's create an export const name update mood, and it's going to be an asynchronous function, and we'll pass in previous state that will, and any, and we'll go form data and set it equal to form data. We actually can copy the same validation fields, so I'll go back to the post mood, and we'll copy it, and paste it in. Then we'll add the connection to the database. We'll say await connect DB and call it here, and go with a try catch block. Let's capture the form data. I'm going to copy it from the post mood function, add it to the update mood function. We'll also need a const for the ID because we're going to pass that. Remember, we passed that in as well, and this is the ID of the mood that we clicked on to be updated. So we'll say form data.get underscore ID, and this is as string. Then underneath the ID, we'll go await mood dot update 1, and we'll go with the first parameter we'll pass in. We want is the ID, set it equal to ID, and then we'll also pass in the note mood. And I think for this one, I'll need to change this to, well, we can just keep it as mood. Hit save. And then now let's, if we get an error, let's log it to the console, console.log error. And we'll just say error. And then we'll go revalidate path and redirect. Click save. Okay, so we can close out the update mood function and the post mood function for now. First thing I want to do is go to the form, the mood form, and let's bring in the update mood function. And the other thing I want to do on this file is we added 2 post moods because at the time we didn't have a second variable to pass in, but now that we do, so since we have that mood or that function created, we'll go to the use action state, and where it says is edit, if we're in the edit state, instead of using post mood, we actually want to use update mood. So let's replace post mood with update mood, save this file. And then now we need a way to update the mood, or click to update the mood, I should say. So let's go ahead and work on creating that now. And remember, we're going to use the reusable prop, the reusable drawer that we created. So I think what we'll do is let's create a separate function, or a separate component, and we're going to bring it into this file named update btn.tsx. We'll start by making this a client-side file. We'll bring in React and also use state. I want to have a icon to represent the button, so let's use React icon. So in the terminal, let's type in npm I React icons, npm I React dash icons, and press enter. Okay. And we'll say import fi edit. No, actually, let's not do it like that. Let's go import from React icons, and we'll go fi, and we'll go fi edit. I want to use the edit icon. Let's bring in the side drawer, and then we'll bring in the mood form. All right. So with our button, this will have props. So we'll say interface update btn props. We'll say mood this is going to be underscore ID string. The note is a string. This needs to be a yep. And then we'll set mood to string. Create a const named update btn. And let's react fc update btn props. And of course, remember with this, we're going to pass in a mood. And with this is no that update btn. Yep, return. And then we'll just give it a div. And let me go ahead and export it now. Export default update btn. Okay. So we'll need the main things we'll need is the variables to open and close the drawer. So just as we did previously, well, we actually can copy the same code from the action bar. So we'll go back to the components directory and we'll grab all of the code to open and close the drawer, and we'll paste it into our update btn. Then inside of the div, we'll pass in a button. It'll have a type of submit. No, excuse me, we don't need to include a type submit. Let's just give it an on-click handler, and we'll pass in the toggle drawer function. And inside of the button, it's going to be represented by the FI edit icon, and to style it a little bit, we'll give it a class name, a height of 4, a width of 4. We'll make the text color blue. No, we'll make it purple, 500. And on hover, we'll set the text to purple, 700. Let's close it out. Then underneath the button, we want to bring in the side drawer, or use the side drawer. So first I'm going to pass in the mood, and this is the mood, well, excuse me, I'm passing the mood form. And remember, we made this dynamic, so if we have the ability to pass in a mood, so we'll say mood is equal to mood, and we'll set is edit to true. All right, goodness, if I can type this morning. All right, and side drawer needs some props, so we'll say is open, and we'll pass in the is drawer open function, and then we'll say on close, and this is going to have close drawer. We'll hit save. So now we're ready to bring in this update button into our mood list so that we can utilize it to update a mood. So underneath the first closing div tag, let's add another div. Set the class name to flex. Item centered, and we'll give it a little space on the X of 2. At the top, I'm going to import the update btn, and that's going to come from /update btn. And we'll go ahead and use that component. We'll go update btn, and the mood that we want to pass in is the mood that we get from this mood, so that if you click on the edit icon, we'll hit save, and we should be able to see it on screen. So if you click on this edit icon, we should get a side drawer, and the side drawer is showing the current note and mood. Let's change it just to make sure that it's working. So we'll say live coding and we'll add 3 S's at the end. Hit update, we get the pending state, and we notice that we now have a sad mood and live coding with additional S's. So I want to do one more thing before we add the delete feature. Let's bring in suspense, and this is just to add a little bit of a better user experience while, and it doesn't take very long, but while the data is being revalidated and loaded from the server, let's show a 1 moment state to the user. So we'll go back to the page.tsx and we'll import suspense. And this is coming from React. Go ahead and copy the mood list component, copy it and delete it, and then let's bring in suspense that we just imported, pass in the mood list inside of it, and then now in the suspense we want to give it a fallback, and the fallback I'm going to give it is 1 moment. Hit save. It'll be hard to see it because it's so fast, but you can see a slight jump. You can see 1 moment for a split second or whatever you would define that time frame as. But okay, that's working. So now let's go back and focus on, and we can close out that. We can close out the update btn. Let's focus on adding the delete action functionality within the lib and actions directory. So we'll go lib actions and we'll add a file named delete mood.ts. We'll start by making this use server. We'll import the mood model, the connection to the database, and we'll bring in revalidate path from next cache. Let's create a const named delete mood, and it will be an asynchronous function. We'll pass in previous state and set it to any, and we'll say form data. It's form data. Let me export it now so I don't forget it. Delete mood. Okay. Export default. Okay, and we'll give it a try catch block. We'll start with await connect to DB. And we'll go const ID is equal to form data dot get, and we want to get the ID as string, and we'll say if no ID, throw new error. ID is required to delete the mood. This is just some validation, and then we'll say const result result is equal to await. We'll grab the mood model. We'll say find by ID and delete, and we want to delete the ID, and we'll say if no result, we'll throw a error.
See this property I'm sitting in right now? It's an Airbnb that's projected to make me $120,000 a year,
giving you control over which parts of the page remain static
We'll throw error, mood not found, not found. Okay, and inside of the catch, we'll say console.log error. We'll go error, and we'll go revalidate path. All right, now we have the delete function. Let's bring it in. Though we could code this directly. Let's add a separate delete button to stay consistent with how we've coded the rest of the project. So we'll go components, and we'll add a file named delete button.tsx. At the top of the file, we'll mark it as use client, and I'm going to bring in the fi trash icon. We'll use that for this one. We'll use the action state. Could have coded it directly. And then we'll also bring in the delete mood. Let me go back to the, let me see something here. Yeah, we created delete mood. So did I miss it? Sorry, there it is. Added the brackets. And we'll start with the interface. Delete button prop. We'll set the ID to string. We'll say delete button. React.fc. And we'll pass in delete button prop. ID. And let me go ahead and export this now. Export default delete button. We'll start by bringing in the use action state. So we'll say const state is equal to form action, and set this equal to use action state. And what we'll pass in is the delete mood function, otherwise null. And then inside of the return portion, we'll add the form. We'll give it an action of action.
And which are regenerated dynamically. We're also applying the same
And inside
strategy
of
for
the
user
form,
profile.
we'll pass in a
Details are
button.
cached, but the content, such as submitted
The
start
fi
dates,
trash
is
can
always
will be
generated fresh
our
with each
button.
request.
We'll give it a class
This
name,
ensures that the latest
height
data
of
is
4,
displayed without
width of
caching,
4,
using the PPM
make the
approach.
text
To submit
red
a startup,
500.
you need to create an account first by signing up with GitHub using social authentication.
Then in the
Or you
button,
can
we'll give it a
some
type
log right in.
of submit.
Do this using the latest version of Next.js. And once you're signed in, your account will be stored in
Hit
Slack,
save.
and you'll be able to go
Now we're
to
ready
the
to
page
bring
start
it
page.
back
Here,
into
we're
the
utilizing React 19
list.
use
So we'll go
actions
to
data.
mood list,
Along with
and we'll
Next.js server
import
actions, all fields right here,
delete
including the image URL,
button.
are validated using Zod, ensuring
Then
that
underneath the
information is
update
kept.
button,
Now,
let's just
export
pass
this to the
in
account,
delete button,
keeping one side on the homepage
or bring
and
in
another one on the
import
start
our
page.
import delete button. We'll set the ID will be equal to mood._ID. And we'll go back. Let's add a mood. Let me test out the validation first. We'll hit save, and you notice that we're getting the error message that note must be 2 characters long, but I don't see the one for the mood. So let's go back to our mood form. Mood error polite state dot mood. And we'll go to action. It's not going to be empty because we always have one mood. Duh, that's right. Okay. So we are good there. I'll close that out. Close that out. Let's test it out. So we'll add a second mood. We'll say hospital visit. Hospital visit. And then we'll say we are scared. Hit save. We see it appear. Let's update the mood of the hospital visit to be indifferent. We'll hit update. We get the pending state. Now let's just delete it because we don't want to see it anymore. Looks like the delete button isn't working just yet. So let's see if we can figure out what's going on with it. And go back to the delete mood action. Everything looks good in the server, or in the terminal, excuse me. We have the delete move. We got the ID, find by ID and delete. Let's take a look at it. Previous state action, yep. Alright, and inside of the delete button, we got the form and the form action. Duh, forgot to pass in the ID. Gotta do it. So we'll go input, sorry, forgot to pass the ID. ID is going to be equal to ID. We'll set the name of this to be ID. The default value is ID, and we'll let it be hidden. Close it. Hit save. Now let's go back and let's delete the hospital visit. And we notice it disappeared instantly. Let's do one more test. We'll say studying. We were angry because we didn't take good notes. We'll hit save. That works just fine. Now let's attempt to delete it. We notice it be removed instantly. Great. So I hope you enjoyed the simple code along of a full stack CRUD application using the latest version of Next.js, Mongoose, and MongoDB. The source code is in the description. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave those in the comments. I'd love to hear back. Please consider subscribing and liking the video. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Love you, man.